You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
All right, welcome back to 91 Reasons. I am the voice, Jeff Tucker, and we're back to talk about, I don't know, whatever I can think of, whatever comes into my head. It's my strange podcast, a journey through the wasteland that is my brain and all the things that I think about. I had a bunch of topics I was going to talk about, and it's hard to pick just one because once you start on that road, you know, it's an hour and a half long journey of just a single topic. So I had to narrow it down, and this week I'm going to talk about sneaking in and all the places I have snuck in over the years. And it's not just one or two things, and it's weird because when you think about sneaking in, the most common would be like at the movie theater, where I have friends who buy one movie ticket and spend the entire day at the movie theater. Jumping theaters from screen to screen. I can't do that. I've never been able to do that. I've never even done it one time. I've never snuck into the movies one time. It sounds crazy because it seems like just one of those things that you do. But, and in the context of what I'm going to talk about for this next show, it's weird to think like I'm too honest to jump theaters. I can't do it. There was a movie theater at Stonewood Shopping Mall in Downey that, believe it or not, the summer of 1985 was playing Back to the Future on one side and Teen Wolf on the other. It was probably only like that for a week or 2 weeks, but I was such a fan of Back to the Future, and then I liked Teen Wolf because Michael J. Fox was in it, that I had to go. So I went and I saw Back to the Future on one side. I walked out. I bought another ticket for the other side to see Teen Wolf. And you know what? Even this many, almost 30 years later, I can remember the clerk, the cashier guy, just looking at me like I was crazy. Like, you dumb kid. Why didn't you just go in the theater when you were done? I can't do it. And 99% of it is simply because I know how the movies work. I know that they're there to make money. I want to pay my money. I'm not there to cheat anybody. And it's also that I love movies so much that I don't have any interest in walking into a movie late. I can't do that. I got to be there early. I want to see the trailers, the crap before. I mean, I don't want to see the crap before, but you get it's part of the experience of getting angry at it. And I'm going to do a whole show about all those bumpers that play before the movies start. Oh, give me a break with that crap. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about sneaking in. But I like the whole movie-going experience, and that includes everything. And I don't want to sneak a look down the hallway and see no usher that is watching and then jump into another theater and I'm in 30 minutes into a movie. That's not how the movies are made to be watched. Yes, a movie you've seen 100 times. I can start watching Back to the Future, Star Wars, a million, Ferris Bueller, any of the John Hughes movies. I can watch them any moment. I can check into the film and watch it till the end. I think the modern day equivalent, the modern day representative of that is Shawshank Redemption. If it's on cable, if you flip by Shawshank Redemption, you must watch it from whatever point it's at until the end when he gets out and they're on the beach. Like, it's just one of those things. You cannot flip past the Shawshank Redemption. So I've never stuck in the movies. I've never done that. Now, I have finagled into a movie, but when I get to that, you'll know that it's not theater jumping. I've never theater jumped. Even at the Alondra 6, where each screen was $1.50, and I think there were two people working the whole theater. I didn't do it. And if you've ever been to Alondra 6, it's not there anymore. But the box office and the screens were so far from each other. You could buy a ticket, walk down the hall, and then open the door for all your friends if you wanted to. Now, I never did that. I wasn't that guy. To me, that's stealing from the movies, and I won't do that. I do other things that skirt the issue, which is what I'm going to talk about, but I've never done, that. So I've been racking my brain. I'm trying to figure out, like, what was the first thing I ever snuck in? And it was a doozy. It was a big one. In 1984, I was almost 13 because it was the World Con, and it was in September 2nd and 3rd, 1984. God, it's a long time ago. I was 12 at the time, almost 13. That's a week before my birthday. And I wanted to go to this thing so bad. I had never been to a sci-fi convention before. And this is almost going to parallel another episode where I talk about conventions, because this was the first one. Now, I didn't sneak into the convention, but I did sneak into a lot of conventions. But I didn't sneak into this convention. But what we did do as far as sneaking is I learned from the best. My mom was the greatest sneak of all time. If there was a way to circumvent a line or get out of waiting or not, a way to it's weird because she wasn't the kind that would get out of paying. My mother was incredibly honest. Her grandfather was a preacher, so they were honest. But I guess she never saw the harm in a little line cutting or something. So the first big one we did was, the reason the WorldCon was so big in Anaheim was that it was going to be the first time they had ever shown the Star Wars trilogy back to back to back. And it was starting at midnight all the way through 6 a.m. And I had to go to this. I think at that time we had just gotten our beta player. So you could rent Star Wars, you could rent Empire. Jedi wouldn't come out for another 8 months, 9 months, something like that. So there was no chance to see it at home. It just didn't happen. So this was a chance to see all three. So we went to the convention. We walked the dealer room. We went up to these strange rooms where people were dancing and playing role-playing games. The whole thing was fantastic. It began a lifelong love affair of conventions for me. But when we went outside to actually get in line to see the trilogy, the line was around the building. Now, I had bad eyes already. I wouldn't get glasses for another year and a half, 2 years. But I had bad vision, and there was no way, looking at that line, that I was going to get to see these movies. I could be in the room with the movies, but I wasn't going to actually see them. Now, I knew them by heart so much that might not have been such a problem, but my mother was not going to let me miss this for anything. So my mom showed me how to do it. She just cut the line. She waited until something happened, and in this case, somebody shook up a soda can and exploded it everywhere. So everybody backed up, and they had to clean up and call somebody. It was a whole big thing. It was one of those classic magician's misdirections, and my mom just sidled up to the crowd, and when everybody got back in line, we got back in line, or in line. We weren't back in line, having never been in line, but we got in line, and we were near the front. And I think a couple of people were a little antsy about us because they might have been there a couple hours. This is before people waited weeks in line. I mean, this was probably a 2 or 3 hour wait, not a big deal. So we might have gotten some flack, but everybody saw that, I was a little kid, big Star Wars fan. My voice is cracking. Well, you got to give the guy a break. So the doors open, 11 o'clock or so, and we ran in, and we got there. We'd only waited a very short time, and I got to see the trilogy on the screen again. It was fantastic. But that was the first taste of this weird sort of, it's not a subculture, but this weird sort of way of dealing with things of you just have to find a way. And it was cemented. My mom cemented it in 1986. So we're going to move 2 years ahead, back with my mom again. Again, this is how this woman operated. She knew that I was a big Back to the Future fan. And there had been this weird episode in my life where I wrote to one of those. There was a couple of TV shows in the 80s that granted fantasies and wishes, like to meet celebrities or to ride on a helicopter or whatever it was. And I remember I wrote to this show, and we got so close to meeting Michael J. Fox. At the last minute, his agent decided that it wasn't a big enough moment for him, and Michael had been what he called overexposed. He was everywhere. So when that fell apart, I thought, I'm never going to get to meet this guy. Well, hey, Family Ties was still on the air, was on the air till 89, and it was filmed right at Paramount. So what better way to see Michael J. Fox in the flesh but to go see a taping of his show? Sounds easy, right? You like a show, you call, you write in for tickets. This is back when you wrote a letter, you write in for tickets. So my mom called the studio. How do we get in to see Family Ties? And they told her at the time, Family Ties was the number 2 show on television, only second to The Cosby Show. The Cosby Show was filmed out of New York. Family Ties was filmed right there in Paramount in Hollywood. So for us West Coasters, it was the only show we had access to, the highest show we had access to see a taping of. So we decided we were going to go down to Paramount because they weren't mailing tickets, because the woman said, look, we can mail you tickets, but you're probably not going to get in. The only way to get in to see a taping of Family Ties is to come down to the studio and wait in line. When the box office opens, you'll have your choice of whatever show, because they were taping 3 or 4 shows at a time there on a Friday night or a Thursday night, whatever it was. I have the ticket here somewhere. I'm actually going to put it up on the net for you all to see. So in the show notes, you'll see where to look at the tickets. So we waited. We got there probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and the ticket booth didn't even open until 10 a.m. the next day. So it was a 12-hour wait on the streets of Hollywood, and there was a bunch of us. It was me and my mom and my friend David from high school and my sister and maybe a couple other people, and we camped out all night. And to talk about dedication, like my mom, whenever I mention my mom, I always say she was an enabler, because she bought, if she saw I had an interest, a mania in something, and the first one was obviously Star Wars, she enabled me. And it was, as long as that was all I collected, I had almost everything, spared nothing. Now, when I moved into Back to the Future, there wasn't anything to collect. There was hardly any merchandise at all. It was all promo stuff, and there wasn't anything to grasp onto to make the movie real. And having been taught the lessons of Star Wars that you have to own all the merchandise to really be into the movie, I tried to get all the Back to the Future stuff. I had the novelization. I had the video standee. I had the poster. I had some buttons and some magazines. The collector magazine was like Bible to me. And then, of course, I had the video, the beta videotape when it came out. But getting to meet Michael J. Fox was a big deal. That's what I needed if I was a big Back to the Future fan. So we waited all night to get the tickets. We were first, obviously in line. The door opens, and the tickets come out, and they're numbered. They're stamped 1, 2, 3, so on and so on. So my mom and I had tickets 1 and 2, and the rest of the family had 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And then the people behind us, because by 10 a.m. there's a line of people behind us. They got tickets numbered, 12 and on up, or whatever it was. And I was jazzed because we had the number 1 ticket. Of course we were going to get in. No sneaking involved. We're just going to get in. So the taping wasn't until that night. So it was another long day at the Paramount studio. Not even at the studio, like on the street next to a gate. So finally the Paramount team starts, the motions of getting the crowd in, and they open the gates. They tell us where to stand, and the guy's really honest. He says they gave out a lot of what's called network tickets. Now, network tickets were tickets from the cast and crew and executives, and they had priority. And remember, Family Ties is the number 2 show. It stars Michael J. Fox, the biggest movie TV star in the world. So everybody wants to see it, right? So we were a little worried, but not too worried, because we had tickets 1 and 2. So we only needed 2 seats to get in, because I wasn't quite yet 16, but we were going to fudge the numbers, right? But this guy was going to let us in regardless, because I was telling him all day what Michael J. Fox meant to me, right? So we see all these VIPs coming through the gate. They've all checking in with the clipboard in the same page. Who's telling them, you've got network tickets, right this way, right this way. And finally, it's getting really close to taping, and he comes out again. He's like, look, I don't think we're going to let anybody in. Nobody's from the public is getting in. They exceeded the seating with the network tickets. And oh my God, I'm crushed. My mother saw me just sort of wilt right there on the street, because after nearly 24 hours of waiting at Paramount Studios. We're not even going to get in to see the thing. It was really disheartening. So my mother, she goes into sneak mode, she finagles something. What happens is this guy comes out. He's really good looking. She strikes up a conversation with him. She figures he's got to be somebody. And it turns out, okay, this is the episode. The episode that they were taping that night is the one where it's a two-parter where Nick and Mallory decide to elope and get married, right? This was episode 1 of a two-parter. And Alex decides he's going to bring somebody home who's got everything that Mallory needs to marry. He's good looking. He's got a college degree. He's got a good job prospect. It's a really funny joke where I don't think the guy has any dialogue other than he says his name. And then Alex says, Mallory, if you don't marry him, I will. It's very funny. Well, that's the guy. He's at the gate with us. My mother's talking to him, and he hands her 2 network tickets. They're not numbered. They're stamped red network tickets, right? So the page guy comes out, and my mom shows him the tickets, right? And this guy, to his credit, he could have simply said, look, I don't know where you got these. I don't know what you finagled. I know you've been here all day. I know you have the numbered public tickets. You're not getting in. It's only for industry types. And instead, he goes, oh, you've got network tickets right this way. And he leads us in. So we left behind the rest of the family. They actually got to see a taping of a show called Sanchez of Bel Air, which it came and went so fast. I only remember the show because they all went to see a taping that night while we went in to see Family Ties, right? Now, the page walks us through the Paramount lot to the soundstage where they filmed Family Ties, and he's talking a mile a minute, and the gist of it is that even with network tickets, we're not guaranteed a seat. And if we don't have a seat, they're going to throw us out again. So we haven't even truly made it into the taping of the show. This was driving me crazy. Like my little teenage mind does not know how to process how close we're getting, and yet the answer still might be no. So we get in, and of course, there's no seats. The whole viewing audience for the taping is mobbed to the gills, because this is the big Friday night or Thursday. I think it was Friday night. It's on the ticket. I should have checked, but I usually do these shows without any kind of notes. I just like to do stream of consciousness, and notes throw you off because you tend to look at them and reflect back. I don't ever take any notes. So this was the big end of the week Hollywood thing because they do a taping, and it's like seeing a 1-act play, and then they all go out to dinner and they party it up. It's like you hear that about SNL. So they did it for sitcoms too. So everybody's here. Everybody. The thing is mobbed with people. Now we walk in. And my mom's arguing with the guy over the chair situation, and I'm looking past the railing at the Keaton house. It's right there. I couldn't believe it. This was the first time I had ever made something from TV or movie tangible. I had been to Point Hills Mall to walk in Marty's footsteps, a lot of that stuff, but this was a live hot set, and it was right there. It was real. The Keaton house suddenly became real. So I wasn't leaving that building, and the guy could tell, this meant everything to me. So he looks at my mom, and he says, look, there's no seats. There's no seats here. What are we going to do? My mom basically puts her foot down and says, you got to figure it out. We have network tickets, Suddenly she's pulling the network tickets. We got these from the guy who's on the show. So you got to let us in. So the guy, unbelievable, in a move that he probably never repeated any time in his career, takes us through the seating area, down the steps. Suddenly, I'm on the same level with the Keaton house, past, all the people working, through a door into the green room. We're sitting in the green room. There's a table, there's monitors, there's snacks, and my mom and I are the only ones there because everybody's rushing around getting the show done. I couldn't believe it. Now, it was a little weird because we realized quickly we were not going to get to see the taping live. We were going to see it on the TV monitors. And that was a little disheartening until, another 45 minutes goes by and they finally start the taping. Well, we're in the green room. So all the actors are walking by us to go to the set. So first we see Tina Yothers, then we see Justine Bateman, then we see Meredith Baxter Birney, and then, oh my God, Michael J. Fox walks by, not 15 feet from where I'm at. If I'd have been a balloon, if there had been any kind of combustible materials, I would have exploded. He was right there. Marty McFly, Alex P. Keaton was so close, like suddenly he was a living person. If that had been everything we did, it would have been the greatest night of my life, getting that close to him, right? So the taping continues. We see the whole show. Now, the page had told us, stay in the green room. He'll come get us afterwards and escort us out. And we were really in no need or position to argue because the guy had done such a nice thing for us, right? So at the end of the taping, my mom goes into sneak mode. Oh, you're wondering where the sneak was going to come in. She wasn't going to wait for this page guy. She gets up and she goes, Jeff, or Jeffrey as she called me, Jeffrey, let's go. I said, let's go where? Or, I was young, so it might have been, let's go. Go where? She says, we're going through the door. Now, I knew that the door led back to the set. And I thought, we're going to go out there? She says, we're going. We're not waiting for permission. So we're going. So I got another lesson in my mother telling me to relax, look like you know what you're doing. Look like you're supposed to be there. That's the lesson. If you want a lesson on how to sneak in someplace, the lesson is look like you're supposed to be there, and no one will argue with you. So we go through the door, and we're practically in the Keaton house. Like we're standing 5 feet from the living room, right? Now, I had a TV guide, and I'll try to get a picture of that to put on the show notes as well. I had a TV guide of the cast. So first out of the gate, Tina Yothers is standing right there. My mother says, can we get your autograph? I was starstruck. These people were gods to me. So Tina Yothers signed my TV guide. Justine Bateman signed my TV guide. Meredith Baxter Birney signed my TV guide. We never got to Michael Gross. He was too popular. He had a lot of people he was holding court with. But there was Michael J. Fox. Again, remember, at this time, Michael J. Fox is the biggest movie star in the world. Back to the Future, and then Teen Wolf becoming a hit, even though it's a mediocre film. And then it just went on and on and on with every successive film. He had a huge crowd around him. My mother didn't miss a beat, walked right up to him, grabbed him by the arm, and she said, Mr. Fox, we have your number one fan over here. He'd like to meet you. Michael J. Fox excuses himself from this group of people, and he walks over to me, and he starts talking to me. How you doing? It's a pleasure to meet you. I didn't know what to say. I was stunned. I was stunned that he was right in front of me, that he was talking to me. I was stunned that we were the same height because I'd always been short my whole life, and here I am, the same exact height as my hero, Marty freaking McFly, and he's talking to me. Had a whole conversation. I told him what Back to the Future meant to me, and then I shakily held out my TV guide for him to sign, and he wouldn't sign it. He said, hold on. And, this is a really weird analogy, but that scene in Last Crusade where Hitler goes to sign the Holy Grail, the Grail notebook, and he just puts his hand back and a pen appears? Michael J. Fox could do that. Now, I'm not saying he's Hitler. I'm saying that he had people that were so attentive to what he was doing that when he put his hand back, a Sharpie appeared in it. In his other hand, an 8x10 glossy appeared in it, and he signed it to me. We talked a few more seconds. He had a lot of people to deal with, and my mother, thank you, Mr. Fox. I said, thank you, Mr. Fox, and he was whisked away. And as soon as he was whisked away, the page from Paramount is right there, and he's like, you guys ready to go? He had watched the whole thing, and I was like, we're ready to go, man. It was the most amazing moment up until that time. Like, I just couldn't believe it. My mother had snuck us in to Paramount Studios onto a taping of Family Ties and got me to meet Michael J. Fox. Like, my mother was so dedicated to doing that kind of thing that I think like at that moment you understand how things work, and you know that, or you discover that all you have to do is have the drive to get somewhere, and you can usually get there. I almost sound like if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything, but it's very true. So that began a really almost lifelong obsession with not only wanting to make the movies and TV shows real. And what I mean by that is I want to be at the location. I want to be on the set. I want to meet the actors. These are the things I know that they're fake. I know that somebody writes it and somebody has an idea, and then it's put together by an incredible team of dedicated people, right? But my contribution, what I want to take away from it is somehow transcending the screen and becoming part of it. Yeah, I'm not really part of it, but in my own little way, I can pierce, the veil. I can be the kid in The Last Action Hero who puts his hand through the movie screen, right? But that kind of stuff really was put on hold because after going to that convention in 1984, I was obsessed with going to conventions. And I went to a couple. I went to a really cool one in Anaheim where I bought some Stormtrooper pieces from, what's that guy's name? Not John Mallow. John Mallow was the costume designer. There was a guy who made Stormtrooper helmets in the 80s. He was the best guy. And I think Lucasfilm finally had to shut him down because his stuff was just too good. And I can't think of the name of his name. I'll have to do some research on that. Again, like I said, folks, no notes. It's just me talking off the top of my head. But the next big turning point in sneaking was I met a guy named Greg. And Greg became my partner in stupid fake crime and my best friend for a while, and just a really cool guy. And Greg had the sort of attitude that my mom had, but Greg's was cranked up to 11 because Greg didn't give a crap about anybody's rules. And he was an older guy, and don't think that the irony of loving Back to the Future and then hooking up and becoming friends with an older Doc Brown type wasn't lost on me, and not anybody that knew me. But I didn't grow up with a father, so I had a string of almost stand-in fathers, from my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Benton, to Greg. And Greg was such a cool guy. And Greg taught me and my friends how to sneak into conventions. And we must have snuck in, no joke, 20, 25 conventions. I suddenly had more spending money at the dealer table because Greg knew every hotel's layout. He knew how to go through the kitchen and end up in the dealer room, bypassing every kind of checkpoint. He knew how to get a hand stamp and then press it to somebody else's. He knew every trick, right? And then we would just go to these conventions. And then even cooler than that sneak was Greg came up with another sneak at conventions. We had exhausted every sneak possible of getting into cons, and we had to graduate. So we graduated to the next level. Greg finagled these conventions to give us a display table for free. Like, I don't know what he did. I don't know if he convinced them that we had a big collection of movie props or whatever it was, but we would get a table. And we would show up, we'd sign in, and there was our free table that we would sit at all day and hang out and use as a base of operations. We could sell stuff or not, just be at the table. But that was a different kind of sneak where it was a paperwork sneak of we finagled how to get into these conventions, not only to walk around, but to sell and make money. Like, it was crazy. We did a Fangoria one all weekend. I made so much money that I was able to just get a room at this big mega hotel and stay over. I don't know how I did it at the time when I look back, because I was like 16, 17. But again, times were totally different back then. Your mother could call and vouch over the phone for you to get a hotel room. It was not a big deal. Not like it is now where you have to sign in blood and, give your genealogy and 13 credit cards on file. But yeah, we did all those conventions and we snuck in. And that was after my friend Eric and I we didn't really sneak into conventions, because sneaking is not always about the side door. It's sometimes about the front door and just figuring out a way in. And we figured out a way to sneak into this convention called Equicon, and we ended up sleeping in the exhibit hall where they had all these movie props on display. But you know what? I'm going to do a whole show on conventions and go into that. Needless to say, from probably 86 to 94, I didn't pay for a convention, whether it was kitchen sneaking, hand stamp sneaking, or whatever. And it wasn't like we were cheating anybody, because we spent a lot of money at those cons. And I came home with, Star Wars helmets and collectibles. I mean, you name it. I was obsessed. And then all the free goodie stuff. Oh, man, it was great. I still even have some of that. My friend Toby, that I just saw not too long ago, he had saved some of that swag from back in the day and had it. And it was like such a time warp to see the stickers and the buttons. And sometimes they were movies that never even came out. Or, because remember when Canon would advertise Spider-Man next summer and we'd get a button and there'd be no Spider-Man movie. They didn't make that. But, okay, so the sneaking continued. And once again, it escalates, right? So the next kind of sneak we did was, and this, again, was about the movies. It was about wanting to be part of the movies. So we figured out how to sneak into Universal Studios during the day when the park was open, the theme park. And back then, gosh, the security was so lax. We would buy a shopper's pass. And what a shopper's pass was you went up to the box office and you gave them whatever the ticket price was, $25, $30, and they gave you entrance into the park for like an hour. So you had like an hour to go in and shop for something that you couldn't buy anywhere else. And then you'd come back through the gate and they would give you your $30 back. So it was free. Well, all you had to do was put the money down for the shopper's pass, go out the exit gate, the real one, and get a hand stamp. So Greg and I would get a hand stamp, go back in the park using the hand stamp, and then exit again through the main gate where we put our money down, get our money back on the deposit, and then use the hand stamp to get back in. So after about, 15 minutes of work, we had a day in the park. And it was weird, too, because they didn't have a lot of rides. So back then, Universal Studios was more just about it was basically really the tour, the tram tour, back when people actually spoke live on it. Gosh, remember those days? Really cool. But it was cool because you could take that tram and see the Back to the Future sets, and it was a really big deal. So we did that, and we also did that at Disneyland. You could do it there. You could buy a shopper's pass, get a hand stamp, and then go back in. So we snuck in all the theme parks and, again, exhausted all that until it wasn't fun anymore. And then we had to move to the next level. And the next level was being on the studio tour on the tram wasn't enough. I wanted to be in Hill Valley. I wanted to just walk through the buildings and be there. So we decided to go to Universal Studios at night at 2 in the morning. And we figured a way in. We found a way in. And we walked all the way down through the brush to Hill Valley. And that must have taken probably, I would guess it took about an hour. It was an hour walk. This is funny because a teenager who won't mow the lawn or do the dishes will walk an hour in the dark in basically a forest if it means at the end you get to go to Hill Valley. So this group of nerds I was with, we would sneak into Universal Studios at night and just walk around. We were not there to vandalize. We were not there to steal. We were there to just soak it in a way that you couldn't soak it in on the tour. And sitting on the steps of the courthouse, sitting in the Cafe 80s or Lou's Diner, depending on when you went, it was really cool. It's hard to describe the first time about 3:30 in the morning, turning a corner and being in Hill Valley for the first time, like really walking around, and it being at night, so it almost felt, dare I say, it almost felt real. This was an unbelievably awesome thing, and we did that for, I don't know, 2 or 3 trips, and it was just it was really magical, and we did it until, again, the novelty wore off, and we wanted to be there during the day. So Greg and I decided we were going to figure out how to get into Universal Studios, the back lot, not the theme park, during the day. So we figured out how to do it. We managed to drive up to the guard shack around the back, speak to him for a few minutes, and we had some reason that we needed to get on the lot. And you know what? The guy gave us a day pass, told us where to park. We parked the car, and Greg and I were on the Universal lot, middle of the day, like 10 in the morning, walking around. We went through every sound stage. We went back to Hill Valley, back to Courthouse Square, and I've got pictures of me at the Cafe Adas in the daytime. And we would wave at the trams when they went by, and that was the coolest movie moment, I think, of my life, of just being in Hill Valley during the day. Like, what a kick, man. What an absolute unbelievable experience, right? And we went through all the sub buildings there. I remember the 3D theater that plays Jaws. They're just facades. So we went back there, and I think, I'm going to get it wrong because, gosh, it was so long ago, but I think there were DeLoreans parked back there, like a lot of the B cars that were used. And there were signs. Like, I remember seeing a sign that to the average person would mean absolutely nothing. But to me, it was a white strip sign that said Chapel O' Love. And I was like, this is where Marty and Jennifer, this is the picture where they get married. I get married in the Chapel O' Love. So I touched it, put my hand on it, and it was really cool. Like, a moment of just making the movie so tangible, so real. It was exhilarating. And I remember leaving the courthouse area thinking, it just can't get any better than that. So we made our way to the actual backlot area, the real backlot area. And we went through some sound stages, and I remember we were headed to the costume, to wardrobe. And the wardrobe was great. Like, again, we were not there to steal. We were not there to demolish or damage or graffiti anything. It was just reverence. And we went all through the wardrobe area. And I remember we dare not take any pictures in there because that would have made us look like tourists. And we wanted to appear like we were supposed to be there, which is how we kept from getting thrown out. But I put on the Captain America motorcycle helmet from the old TV movie, and then Greg tried on most of a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica, and that was really cool, like really cool. And then the capper, like, this is hard to believe, but the capper was, we left wardrobe and we're walking back to the car because we were like, we're going to go. We've had a great day. We see a guy walking towards us, and it's Michael Tolkien, who played Strickland in Back to the Future. And we stopped and talked to him and asked him where he was going. He was going to Alaska to film some movie. I don't know what it was, but I'm like, I'm with Strickland. And I looked at him, and he knew what I was going to ask. And he made me ask it, and I said, will you call me a slacker? And he goes, slacker. And oh my God. It was great. It was so much fun. It's hard to even put it in words. I mean, I've talked about it a couple of times, but this is like the big audio record of Greg and me and our journey through Universal Studios. It was cool. So, we left, we had a good time, and that was pretty much the cap on Universal Studios, because it wasn't going to get any better than that. It wasn't going to get any better than walking around the day, walking on all the sets, trying on costumes, and meeting Mr. Strickland, who called me a slacker. And the footnote, not the footnote, the sort of sad epilogue to that whole situation, that whole time period, was turning on the news and seeing the studio on fire and the Back to the Future sets burned. And I cried because that was history being lost. I don't know what happened to it. I felt empty, and eventually they rebuilt it. But, it's one thing to rebuild and try to pass it off. When the goldfish dies while you're at camp and you replace it, kids know. And we know that that's not really the Back to the Future set from the movie. But, that was terrible. And, I remember just watching it, just like watching Atlanta burn and Gone with the Wind, man. Everything was gone. And I was just so grateful that I had a chance to walk around on it before it went away. You don't get a second chance at some things like that. And for a guy who was such a fan of those movies, that the chance to walk around, and this was all prior to Part 2 even coming out. So we weren't even sure what half of that stuff even meant. I think it was just movie sets of the upcoming movie, and I never did get to see the alternate 1985 set. They must have built that first, quick, and out of the way, because it was gone pretty quick. I never saw it. But, what happens is that Greg, who was a huge Star Trek fan, I always enjoyed Star Trek. I wasn't really into Star Trek till I met Greg. And Greg was such a Star Trek fan, man. He was, oh my God. Everything in his house was Star Trek. And I know that sounds like, oh yeah, everything in his house was Star Trek. But everything in his house was Star Trek. He had Star Trek stuff. He had a replica of the captain's chair, for goodness sake, right? So Greg decides he's going to do the same thing over at Paramount, because that's where they filmed Star Trek. Now, I wasn't involved in it in the beginning, because what they were doing was beyond what my mom would allow. I think my mother was cool with the Universal thing, because if we'd been caught, and we never got caught, we got a couple of times pretty close, but if we'd been caught, I was underage, I wasn't there to do anything malicious, my mother would have just picked me up, and I'm sure it would have been a slap on the wrist. And for a kid that never did drugs, never drank, never partied, never got into trouble, this is the worst thing I ever did as a teenager, was sneak into the movie sets. But Paramount was another animal, because Paramount wasn't a theme park. There was no tour. It's in metropolitan city area, because Universal's backed by not miles, but acres and acres of brush. So it's not, it's a different animal. And it was funny too, the funniest, not to go back to Universal because I put the cap on it, but the funniest Universal story was getting caught one time and having to get out. Like, again, we didn't want any trouble. We weren't there to screw with anybody. We just wanted out. So we got spotted by security, so we hoofed it out. And again, remember, it's an hour hike back to the car. So we hoofed it back to the car, and by the time we get to the car, the residents who live above Universal are watching the security guards moving around a little faster than normal. So they must have known something was up. So by the time we get back to the car, there's a family in their yard watching us trudge up the walk there. Up past the Psycho house even. I'll never forget one of the parents, one of the older people telling us, you're not supposed to be in there. And this little kid, he must have been 6. He goes, yeah, it's private property. And, oh my God, that kid's what? In his 30s now? It's private property. So we got the hell out of there. But again, we never got caught. We never did anything bad. It was just teenagers having a goof, right? But what Greg was doing over at Paramount was different. So I'm not sure how Greg initially got into Paramount. I'm assuming it was the same ploy at Universal, where you pull up to the guard shack and you've got some reason to be on the back lot, right? So what happens is Greg and this other guy get on the lot, and they go to where the Star Trek soundstage, right? And they bunker down until everybody leaves. So it's the middle of the night. They've been there for hours, and they're going to make a documentary about walking around the Star Trek sets, right? So Greg's got a Star Trek Next Generation uniform. He's wearing the uniform as they walk around, and Greg showed us the video. He showed me the video at his house after the fact, right? So it's Greg walking through the corridors and the pneumatic doors, which are not pneumatic at all. They're they're hand driven. He's opening and closing the doors, and him and this other guy are flipping all the switches on. They're lighting everything up. All the control panels are lighting up. He's on the bridge. It was crazy. And at one point, he's in sick bay, and he gets in Dr. Crusher's examination table, which has this little thing that comes over the top of you, and he's laying there. It's a really funny video, right? And the capper to that video is Greg's walking through, and he's giving you the tour. Welcome to the Enterprise. This is the tube that leads here, and this hallway leads here. And you hear a security guard, and you hear them go, "Hey!" It's a woman. "Hey, hey!" And then Greg and this other guy just pick up, and you can see the camera just take off running, right? And you hear the woman go, "Come here! I said come here!" And they managed to get out. I think how they got out was a 13 or 14-foot wall had to be leapt. So they got out, and I think Greg got injured doing it. I think it was a pretty big something on his ankle. He got injured doing it. So we're watching this video because it must have been one of those things where it's like, "Hey, Greg, what happened to your ankle? Why are you on crutches?" And Greg goes, "Funny story." And he puts on this video. Now, we're all dying. And the first thing that comes, as soon as the tape ends, it goes to snow, right? I go to Greg. I ask Greg, "I got to have a copy of this tape." And he's like, "No, you can't have a copy." Now, I was flummoxed. I can't have a copy? Why can't I have a copy? I didn't go on this adventure, but I've done this. And he's like, "No, you can't have a copy because if I give you a copy, you might make somebody else a copy, and then it's going to get out." And I said, "You really don't trust me to have a copy of this?" "No, I don't trust you." So I didn't get a copy. So I was ticked off about it. And what happened was that, remember, all this time we're going to these conventions. There's a guy at the convention, and his name is Whitney. Now, Whitney's the guy who deals in all the videos that you can't get. He's got Ralph Bakshi's Wizards. He's got the director's cut of whatever movie you're looking for with all the extra scenes. This is way before anything. This is before even Laserdisc, man. Whitney was the guy. You want a TV show that you remember? Whitney's got it, right? You want to see the Spider-Man TV show? Whitney's got it. Whitney was the guy who had the Fantastic Four movie, the Roger Corman one. Nobody had it. Whitney's got it. Well, I walked by the booth, right? I'd always checked in with Whitney's table because I loved anything I wasn't supposed to have on video. Any kind of schlocky horror movie, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, whatever, right? So I look up, and oh my God, on his little TV where he shows off the latest video, it's Greg walking through the Star Trek sets. I said, what's that video? And he goes, "Oh man, this video's great. This is this guy, and he walks through all the Star Trek sets, and then he gets caught by security. It's called Trekking Through the Studios." Oh my, I think I fell on the floor laughing so hard. So I bought it, $10, and Trekking Through the Studios was mine. And guess what? I still have it. I still have Trekking Through the Studios. And I remember running to Greg going, "Dude, you got to come over to this table. This guy's got your tape for sale." Oh, my God. It was so unbelievably funny. And what a turn. Whoever he gave it to, whoever he didn't trust, whoever he did trust with the video, broke that trust, and there it is, right for sale on the table. So I took my copy home, and I watched it over and over again. He's taunting Greg, "Hey, I got Trekking Through the Studio. You want a copy?" I don't think he bought a copy. I think he was a little ticked off about it. But yeah, that was funny, man. So Greg had done that sort of Paramount thing. I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to get caught by security like that. That scared me, and I wasn't that kind of guy. But going in during the day, that might be fun. If it's just walking around the back lot during the day, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to stow away on the Enterprise all night. That's not my thing. So Greg and I did that shtick. We got on the lot again. We had lunch at the commissary, which was really cool. And then we had free reign of the Paramount backlot. And it's weird because, like, when you see studios backlots in the movies, there's always 1,000 productions going on. Remember Pee-wee's Big Adventure? There's like Knights and Cowboys and every kind of movie on in production at the same time. And you know what? When you go in a backlot, it's never like that. There might be one or two things in production, but there's never a whole bunch. For whatever reason, we went there on the exact perfect day because we went straight for the Star Trek sets thinking, hey, if they're not filming for the day, during the day, we'll just take a quick stroll. I'll get to sit in the captain's chair. No muss, no fuss, right? So we go over, and I sat in Picard's chair. Total badass moment. But it turned out it wasn't down for the day. It was just a lunch break. So we got out of there quick. As soon as we get out, we look around, and oh my God, there's Picard, Data, and Worf in full costume heading to the set. I was blown away. I was not expecting that. So the day was already perfect at that point. We had done a quick spin through the Enterprise. We had sat in the captain's chair, and then we saw the characters fully costume going to the set, man. That was unbelievable. But there was more. We walked around, and again, this was I want to say this was probably 87, 88. So I was 16, 17, and oh man, it was so cool. We ran in a corner, and we see John Ratzenberger dressed as Cliff having lunch. So we knew that Cheers was filming that day. Now, I loved Cheers. I didn't worship it the way I worshiped Family Ties, but I was a big Cheers fan. When it aired on Channel 5 at 11 in syndication, I watched every night, right? So we get over there, and we're in Cheers. Greg and I just walked into Cheers. Now, the weird thing is that the bar was on wheels, so they could wheel it wherever they needed to wheel it to get the camera in close if they were filming behind the bar or around the bar. So when we got in there, the bar was not where you expect it to be. It was off to the side. But I didn't care. I stood at the bar, even at a place. I sat at a table. I went up and got right on the sign that says, this is a square house. Please report any improprieties to the manager. I was enthralled with that sign on the show because it's in every episode. So to be able to just that's the sign. I mean, it's stupid to think it's a sign, but there it was. So Greg and I walked through Cheers, and after Star Trek and Cheers, there was nothing left that could have topped that. Nothing except, of course, the Family Ties soundstage, which I knew right where it was. So we go into the Family Ties set. They're not filming, and I sat in the Keaton living room. I sat on their couch. I sat in the Keaton living room. I used the hallway to go into the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator. Again, not there to take anything, not there to vandalize, not there to scratch my initials for all eternity. I'm not into any of that stuff. I was there to be in the house. I was in the Keaton house. It was a really surreal moment. Like, Back to the Future was a temporary everything. There was no chance to be in a hot living set other than facades, right? But Family Ties was still in production, and there I was in the house. It was really cool, and it was the pinnacle of all the sneaking I had done at that point. Like, to be in the Keaton house, it was really surreal. I wish times were different. I wish you had a cell phone with a camera on it back then, or anything. You can't whip out a camera and take pictures. They're going to throw you right out. So you just have to use noggin and keep it all. And I certainly have. Again, I've never drank, never done drugs, so all my memories from those days are crystal clear, the good and bad. So, I mean, anybody who's lamenting the fact that they've forgotten their high school life, it's not so good remembering it all, trust me. But it is in there. And it was really cool being on that set. So that really closed out the Paramount thing. I mean, we did it all. There was nothing left to do at that point. So I turned sneaking into something else, by this time, it's probably, I want to guess it was 91 or 92. No, it was 92, right? It was 1992, and I was almost 21. And I decided I was going to take sneaking to a whole new level. So I decided to sneak into not movie sets or studios, but events, right? Events. And the first taste I got of the event was actually 1987. We had gone to the Star Wars 10th anniversary convention, and they had a big display of Spaceballs that was coming out that summer, right? Or Christmas. I don't remember when Spaceballs was out. But we heard they were doing a sneak preview of Spaceballs somewhere in town that night. We were determined to go, so we were going to sneak into the sneak preview. We found out the theater. There was no way to get a ticket. No way to get a ticket. It was one of those, you're not getting in, right? And when I tell you how we got in and how we ended up watching the movie, you'll know that it was definitely the 80s, because they would never do this now. We got to the theater, right? And the usher tells us, I'm sorry, the screening's full. You can't get in. And we had just come from the Star Wars convention with the Spaceballs display, including Spaceballs buttons. We had a pocket full of them. So the guy at the door, he needed 3 or 4 buttons to get us in. Not a problem. We go in. We give him the buttons. We get to the door of the theater. And you know who's at the door of the theater? Unbelievable. Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks is standing at the door of the theater with Ronnie Graham, the co-writer of the movie. He sees our Spaceballs buttons. He tells whoever's in charge, these boys are getting in because they already love the movie. They haven't even seen it. So they took us in, and we ended up watching the movie since all the seats were taken. We ended up watching the movie laying down in front of the front row, staring straight up at the screen. Again, never in a million years would that happen today. Fire code, whatever. Back then, it wasn't a big deal. We got completely nauseous watching it that way, but we got to see the movie. So when we went back to the convention, and the next day, everybody's looking at the display of costumes, and we're all like, oh, we saw it last night. That was pretty cool. So that was the first event that I snuck into like that, right? Without my mom's help or anything. So by 92, it was an art, and I was so cocky about being able to sneak in anywhere I needed to sneak into that I decided I was going to ask a girl on a date and take her to the MTV Awards. The MTV Awards, they were doing them at Pauley Pavilion at USC, right? I didn't have a ticket. And I went and I picked her up, this chick Angie I dated for one date. This one turned out real well. I said, she's like, where are we going? I said, we're going to MTV Awards. And she turns on the TV and she's like, well, they're on. I said, yeah, we're going to sneak in. We'll figure a way in. Now, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just cocky. I was like, we're going to get down there. We're going to find a way in. So that's what we did. So I got really bold. After so many successes of sneaking into places, it just seemed like I can get anywhere. So, yeah, I asked this girl out on a date. I didn't tell her where we were going, and I just figured we'd go sneak into the MTV Awards, right? At the time, this must have been... and to be honest, I had no idea how we were even going to do it. So, like I said, we left while the show was still on. And we drove down, and I assumed we wouldn't get into the actual show itself. I was more interested in the after party. So by the time we got there, I think that the finale was going on at the time, and it was Axl Rose and Elton John were doing November Rain, this big giant orchestral production of it. It's a big deal, right? But I was more interested in the fact that it was the show where Howard Stern dressed up as Fart Man, and I had just started listening to Stern not too long before that on KLSX 97.1 here in Los Angeles. So it was kind of a big deal. Like, he had just started on the radio, and here was a chance to see the guy live, all the way from New York. So that was a pretty good incentive to get in. So I remember this girl Angie had no concept that I was going to be able to pull this off, and she probably thought I was crazy, which I was. But crazy is what gets you in. So I can remember we went up, and the first set of barricades, there were a lot of fans there. Everybody's trying to get a peek at anybody who was famous. And as soon as we walked up, we saw Tori Amos and her mom. After listening to them talk for a while, it turned out to be her mom. And they were on their way to the after party. And there was a big security guard there. So I just sort of went up and asked him, like, what was the security? How is that... how are they keeping people out? And he was pretty honest with me. He said that there were multiple checkpoints. And after he said that, I said, hey, then if that's the case, just let us get past this checkpoint, and we'll try our luck farther on down the line. Now, I don't know if he meant to do it like as a way of, hey, kid, go ahead and go in, but he turned his back almost on purpose. So we were able to slip under the barricade right by him and just into the crowd, right? So that became how to do it, was that you walked up, and when a big crowd of people went in, you just mixed in with them. And there were too many people at that point for them to check, because everybody I think they had wristbands at the time. It wasn't a lanyard, it was a wristband. And it was one of those kind that the hospital kind that lock on and don't come off. They were purple, shiny purple, so they were supposed to be hard to duplicate. But I remember getting to the final checkpoint, and this guy was not going to let us in. He was checking everybody's wristband. He was making sure only the celebrities got in, right? So this was do or die situation, man. I walked up to him, and he looked at me, and he said, "Where's your wristband?" And I could tell, like, he was going to be trouble. So there's only one way to get past that, and that was I put on a fake British accent, and I said, "Look here, man. We've been dealing with all these people asking for these wristbands. We haven't got wristbands." I just yelled at the guy in a really obnoxious fake English accent for like 20, 25 seconds. And his eyes glazed over. And he said, "Just go, dude. Just go." So we went in to the after party. It was fantastic. What a moment. What a moment, man. I felt like Steve McQueen in The Great Escape, man. So we got in the party, and it was really cool. It was an open bar. I remember that, which was, to Angie, it was a big deal. To me, it wasn't, because I don't drink. I remember we walked up, and Ice-T and David Faustino from Married with Children were just getting as many drinks as they could get. So we did a circuit around, and there was only really one thing I was interested in, and that was Howard Stern was doing a broadcast. So I wanted to hang out and watch Howard Stern, and she wanted to look around, which was fine with me. I remember she had her belly button pierced, and that seemed to be a really big deal at the time. She had it done at Lollapalooza, and not a lot of girls had it at the time. So as she walked around, people were coming up, like asking her about it. How'd she get it? Did it hurt? It was a big deal, big conversation starter. So she did her circuit, and I just planted myself right in front of the Howard Stern booth, and I watched him do the whole show for about 45 minutes or so, and it was really cool. Of course, I had every intention of getting up the next morning early and listening to it, because this is when they only played the show once. I overslept. I've never heard the show that they did. I know that when I walked up, they were interviewing Tori Spelling, asking her about her father and about 90210. At least I think it was Tori Spelling. It might have been Shannon Doherty. I'm pretty sure it was somebody 90210. Then Gary Delabate comes over with the microphone, and they're talking to some girls in the audience, because it's all about bimbo girls and stuff. And I'll never forget, like, these girls said they would take their tops off or whatever it was to get on the air. And I leaned into Gary's microphone and I said, "Oh my." And either "oh my" or "hey now." Now, those catchphrases had not been invented yet. And Gary gave me such a dirty look for putting my voice on the air. So if anybody's got that show on tape, I would love to hear exactly what I said. Did I say, oh my? Did I say, hey now? I don't remember. I know I said something on the mic, so that's my claim to fame. I was on the Howard Stern show for 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, and I got glared at by Gary Delabate, so that was pretty cool. But it was a good time because it was a really fun date, didn't cost anything. I must have looked impressive, but I'll tell you what, I drove her back to her house. I didn't get a goodnight kiss, nothing. I was, oh, thank you, Jeffrey. That was such a good time. And I'm like, what does a person have to do to impress this girl? Give me a break. I took you to a Hollywood party. Any girl would die to go there. All these celebrities, all these famous people at the time. Nah, I barely heard from her after that. So I don't know. You know, it was a real high moment of being able to sneak in somewhere that cool, but a real reality check moment of, well, you know, that doesn't get you girls, doesn't get you any kind of dates after that. But, you know, hey, maybe it worked out for the best. Obviously it did because I'm married with kids, but what I mean is, where would you have gone after that? I mean, where are you supposed to take a girl after that? You take her to the MTV Awards on your first date. Where do you go after that? You can't really just take her to dinner and a movie, the Dante Hicks dinner and a movie date night. So, oh well, whatever. But it was a really cool time. And not long after that, I took the girl who would eventually become my wife, Rachel. We were going to sneak into the Grammys, but I'll tell you what, we got down there and security was way too tight. You know, MTV Awards is loose. It's, you know, it's rock and roll. The Grammys were the real deal, man. I was right off the bat, I was like, we're not getting in here. So that didn't quite work out, sneaking into the Grammys. But looking back and trying to think of all the other places I've snuck in, there was a really cool one, and it was a really small sneak where we went and saw Willie Nelson out at Cerritos at the Performing Arts Center. Yeah, okay, pause it now and laugh. Willie Nelson. It was a great concert, but you know how they have like benefactors of the theater, and they've contributed money, and they have a seat named after him or whatever it is, and then for like a perk, they get to go and meet the performer that night. Now, we went out back after the show because we know that Willie Nelson is a really cool guy, and he will stop and sign any autograph you want. So we were hoping to get autographs or whatever. But when we get out back, there's a line of people waiting to actually get on his tour bus to meet him on the bus. So I just got in line. Oh, my wife's tugging at my arm. What are you doing? I go, hey, look, if you just they don't know I'm not a supporter of the theater. They don't know who I am. If I'm in line, they just assume I'm with the group. So I got in line. I was last in line. So it was really cool. Like, I was on the stairwell of the bus for, gosh, probably 10, 15, 20 long minutes. And I'm standing there, and I can see, like, Willie is sitting at the little tour bus table in there, and he's talking to the benefactors, you know. He's signing whatever they want. And I'm like, this is going to be so cool if I can pull this off. And it turned out even better than I had hoped, because since I was last in line, as soon as I walked up to go sit at the table with him, everybody else left. So it was me and Willie Nelson on his tour bus. I looked across, and I said, how's it going, Willie? It was a good show. We had a good time. It's a real honor to meet you. And he thanked me and asked if I wanted anything signed, and we got a couple of ticket stubs and stuff signed. And that was a really cool moment. Like, he was a really cool guy, and he didn't know who I was, whether I was with the group or not. And I think that's the theme. That's the underlying theme of this whole thing, is if you want to go in somewhere. Now, it's tougher these days. You know, after 9/11, everybody's all nervous about security. You can't really pull a lot of crazy stuff because, you know, you're a terrorist, or it's so stupid. But there are still things you can sneak in. You can figure out ways. There's always a way to do it. As long as you look like you're supposed to be there. Most people, with the way being in a social situation, what it calls for, how are you supposed to act? They won't say anything to you because they're afraid of looking foolish, and that's how you get places. We tried to go to the premiere of Alien Resurrection. I'm a huge Winona Ryder fan, and I've actually never met Winona Ryder. She's one of the top celebrities I've never gotten to meet. So we went to the premiere of the Alien movie, And we were there for a while, and I was trying to finagle anything I could to get in the theater to meet her. And I had to settle for watching her walk up the red carpet, get out of her limo and walk up the red carpet and do the interviews, right? And I was standing on a newspaper machine, so I'm way over the heads of anybody in the crowd. And I just started yelling at her. And finally, a cop told me I had to get down. I was disrupting things. And I did because, again, I'm not out to get arrested. I'm not out to do anything illegal. I'm just a fanboy who wants to make things tangible, who wants to make things real. I love movie props. I love holding things that have been in movies. I love going to movie locations. I love being on movie and TV sets, all that stuff, We drove the kids down a couple of years ago to where they filmed The Office, all the exteriors. It's right there on the street. That's not so much a sneak as hey, this is a cool thing. You just have to look up on the internet. It was just a few blocks from the Brady house, and that was really cool. Like, it was one thing seeing Dunder Mifflin because The Office was a really cool show, and it was cool to be like, oh, my God, we're here at Dunder Mifflin. They had the Scranton Business Park sign with Vance Refrigeration and everything. And but I'll tell you what, driving around the corner a few blocks away to the Brady house, that was a trip because I grew up on the Brady Bunch, man, and it was really cool to be that close to the exterior of the house. I know it's not the same inside. I know it was all sound stages, but the kid in me was like, this is really amazing. Like, here, we're really here. And I've given that to my kids in so much as we try to seek out the things they like and hook them up with, if we can, meet a celebrity or two. We went to the Train concert last summer, and they had been doing this thing where, since the theme of the show was mermaid, the song Mermaid, if you dressed up as a mermaid, they picked people to actually go up on stage during that song with the band. So I borrowed an ultra cool mermaid costume, and we didn't get picked. So I did what I always do. I walked over, I talked to the guy. I was like, how do you get picked? Well, it's the costume, and sometimes we do this, sometimes we do that. I said, but look at this little girl. You got to pick her. So they picked her. You just have to ask. You have to assume competence. It's an improv skill. Get up there and be the guy. So we were the guy. I was the guy. And instead of sitting in the nosebleed, I wouldn't even say seats because there were no seats. It was lawn, and it was all mud up top. Instead, we were on stage with the band. Pat Monahan sang to my daughter, man. That's the cool part. That's when you cross the veil from observer to participant. And that's how you make it real. You can't make Star Wars real. I know people have made the pilgrimage out to Tunisia and Norway to see all that. I'd like to do all that. I don't have that kind of income, and I don't really know if I want to fly halfway around the world to see snowbanks. It's much cooler to live here in California, to find the things that are local, to go the places that are just right around the corner here, and to make it real. My kids watched a Toy Hunter with Jordan Himbro. We met him at WonderCon. I managed to get my kid on the show, and that just took perseverance. Another thing where you just go up and you just talk to, how you doing? This is what I've got to offer, and they were all about it. So it was really cool to take something that the kids watch every week on TV and, again, cross through, make it real. I've snuck a lot of places. I'm sure there's some I've forgotten. I'm sure there's some that I didn't mention because some things are better left in the dark. But I can tell you, it has been a fantastic adventure with all the friends that I've made over the last, 30 years now, of sneaking in places and spending time on a paddle wheel steamboat at 3 a.m. With security inches from where we're hiding. Stuff like that is priceless, man. To be in Buck Rogers' starship, the one from Earth, man, to be in it, even though it's a rotting Hulk on the back lot, but just to be in it, it was really cool. To be at 20th Century Fox, which I have not talked about. I got to go there once and see all these amazing sets from the early 80s. It's fantastic. And if you're a fan, I urge you, don't do anything illegal, but there are ways. Make it real. Find that thing that makes you excited and happy, you know. It's a real bummer now that movies are filmed on green screen, because you can't go to a green screen. You know, you can't touch a green screen and go, I'm at the same place that movie takes place that I really like. You know, all that CGI trickery, it's ruining the movies. And I didn't want this to spiral into some diatribe against special effects, because I grew up on special effects. Star Wars, special effects movie. But it's people and it's places that make the movies so great. And if we're moving towards all movies shot on a green screen, there's a movie coming out just recently, Maleficent. The entire movie looks green screen. How can you hold it? How can you go to it? How can you make the movie real? You can't, unless you hang a green sheet and superimpose yourself in the movie. But that's, you know, that's not quite the same thing, is it? No, it's not. Watch Back to the Future and then go to Pinellas Mall. What a kick that is. You know, if you're into these things, find where they film them. Go watch. I've seen movies being filmed. It's boring as hell, but you're still there. You're still part of it. You know, my friend Greg and I once snuck into being extras in Mel Gibson's Forever Young movie. They were doing a cattle call, and they weren't paying anybody. And the sneak there is we got on the payroll, so we got paid for it. I'm in the movie, for goodness sake. Hung out with Mel Gibson all day. So take a tip from Frankenfurter, Dr. Frankenfurter. Don't dream it, be it. Find a way to get in there. Find a way to sneak in. Or better yet, get a job in it. Become a caterer. Become a best boy, a gaffer, a lighting guy, whatever it is. Make it real. There's the cat. Well, I have to go feed the cat. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you again on 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?